And Leslie Cross is responsible more than anybody else for the development and evolution of vegan philosophy. So they started in the 1940s. By 1954, which this comes from, they were kind of finished. And the last essay by Cross is 1954, and it's called The Surge of Freedom, and it's absolutely excellent. It's his last word in terms of the philosophy. And you can find them online, all of his essays, because he wrote loads of essays. And if you look at a site called A Candid Hominid, you'll find all his essays there. Now, one sin really against Cross is to take anything, certainly a single word, line out of Cross. He was a journalist, he wrote in complete sentences, he wrote incomplete essays, often in a series of them. So to take one sentence out of his essays is a distortion. And unfortunately, there are some modern day vegans who will keep doing that, and they'll take one sentence out of all his essays and say that's veganism. And the truth is, it's not. It might be the focus of it, but it's not the scope of it. So we've got to be careful about kind of cherry picking from the founders. He was a journalist, and so therefore, it was before social media, it was before Twitter. They didn't write in sound bites. They wrote full essays. So you've got to read Cross in full, really. So this is where we start to get focus and scope. You might not see this, but I'll tell you what it says here. He's talking about broad aspects of veganism. He said the first broad aspect is our concerns about the exploitation of our fellow animals. And he says, so that means there'll be, in the future, the vegan future, there'll be no butcher's shops. And then this little line, sorry you can't read it, is really interesting, because he said, if the milkman, if he still goes on his rounds, the milkman will be delivering vegan milk, he said. So that's going to be our future. So first he talked in that kind of sexist way, but also he didn't realise that milk person deliveries were going to stop. Now this is really interesting. So the countryside will not be heavy with the anguish cries of cows over their calves, which sounds like a very modern thing to say. Modern influencers and that will say that type of thing. There will be no, slaughterhouses, no vivisection laboratories, and nobody will go hunting. And so that was his first aspect. And he said that was the obvious parts of veganism, but there were some parts that are not so obvious. And this is where we move from the focus to the scope. And he said, the benefits to man himself of living in a kindlier and more enlightened world can be envisaged only in the broadest outline. His health, physical and mental, will be greatly improved. So once again, you've got this holistic, full picture of veganism. The focus, the benefit on our fellow animals, and then the scope, the benefit on ourselves, essentially. This is 51. There we go. And he said, until the advent of veganism, comparatively few regarded the animals as being either worthy of or entitled to the right to be free. And probably fewer still realised the impressive effect which the granting of such a right would have on the freedom of humanity itself. So once again, this holistic picture. The only gripe I've got, as somebody who's influenced by Tom Reagan, over there, that's his quote, is that we need to think about moral rights and legal rights here. So it's not, the case for animal rights is not about granting our fellow animals rights. It's claiming that they have them. They have moral rights, it's just that they're disrespected. The ideal situation is that we convince enough people that our fellow animals have moral rights, which then gets codified into law and become legal rights. And in a weird way, you shouldn't really need legal rights if people were good. But as you know, they're not. I mean, just look around the world at the moment, right? And so that's an interesting thing. So I have a problem with the granting of rights. Did the kindly men of Britain grant the right to vote? That kind of thing. That they had that right all along. It's just that their right is overridden. Here's another one from Cross. And again, well, if I take that back a little bit first, it's, well, I can't take it back. Oh, well, the first bit here is, again, talking about the obvious bits that are going to be, you know, no slaughterhouses, this kind of stuff, and all the kind of general things in terms of our opposition to the exploitation of our fellow animals. And then the second broad aspect, so this is how he thought about veganism, two broad aspects. Now I translated that to focus and scope. So the first broad aspect is our relations with our fellow animals. The second is what it does for us. And then we've got the human evolution bit again, that they thought that a central part of veganism was about the moral evolution of humanity, and that we would do a lot of favours for ourselves by doing a lot of favours for our fellow animals, because it's all linked in terms of moral good, if you like. And then he said, until the present relationship between man and his fellow creatures is replaced by one of companionship on a relatively equal footing, the pursuit of happiness by man is foredoomed to a tragic and painful frustration.